Hey Chaotic Crew, Brian here. I've got another Secrets of Strixhaven Precon upgrade review and giveaway. Before I dive into how to win Secrets of Strixhaven Precon of your choosing, I want to let you know that this episode is brought to you by Manapool. Now, Manapool is a fast-growing marketplace for Magic the Gathering that makes buying and selling cards easy. Their optimizer helps you get the best value in buying cards, and the team is focused on making it a great experience for buyers and sellers alike. Thanks to Manapool for helping out the channel, and make sure to hit their affiliate link in the description below to go get you some new Strixhaven cards. Now, I'm going to go a bit fast here. We are doing a giveaway for one of these precons of your choosing if you're in the US. You got to comment down below what your favorite Quandrix card is. Yeah, it's got to have one of those Quandrix stamps on it, or I guess one of these precon cards that are brand new. And let me know in the comments below, comment on all the other upgrades. This is the third out of 5 that we're doing. And then after each one gets to 50 likes, we're going to announce a winner and go from there. But diving into the deck, Quandrix Unlimited. This is the second time I'm recording this because I had some audio snafus. So I'm going to go a bit faster than maybe I normally would. You got Zamone, Infinite Analyst, 3 mana 0/4. First spell you cast with X and its mana value each turn costs 1 less to cast for each +1/+1 counter on Zamone. So first one's probably going to cost 0 less. But then the second ability is whenever you cast your first spell with X and its mana cost each turn, put 2 +1/+1 counters on Zamone. So they constantly fuel each other. If you have ways to grant instant speed, to your X spells, or if you have X spells that are instants, great. Primo, the Unbounded, is essentially a big meaty boy. You get what you pay for, literally, right? X into the mana cost, and then 3 extra mana. Enters with twice X +1/+1 counters. And then whenever one or more creatures you control with base power 0 deal combat damage to a player, you make another 0/0 with that many +1/+1 counters on it. It also has trample, so he can deal some good damage and make tokens. So he cares about tokens and 0/0 creatures. But this does a little bit of both, but Zamone is the better commander here, just because you're wanting to cast a lot of these X spells cheaper and bigger. All right, some fun new cards to go over. Allen Spiralmancer copies the first spell with X and its mana cost that you cast each turn, so great there. Kinetic Ooze, when it enters, can destroy an artifact or enchantment, draw a card, and potentially double the number of +1/+1 counters on any number of other target creatures. That depends on how much you put into X, so that's pretty neat there. Nev, similar to a commander, is going to buff itself when you cast X spells, but instead of making them cost less, he gives your creatures trample, so pretty strong there. Yavimaya Bloomsage is kind of busted, but is a creature that, just essentially 3 mana 2/2 that gives a 1/1 counter on each of your creatures during your end step. Then, if that creature has power 7 or greater, Yavimaya Bloomsage becomes prepared. You can cast the sorcery on the next turn or any turn after, and that's pretty busted because you could just essentially, when you cast that, you can pay 1 life to add Colorless, and so you can put as much into X as you want and just get a metric ton of value off of that. But then once you cast it once, it's unprepared and you have to go through that process again. Striding Shotcaller is pretty neat. 2 mana 0/4 with Reach. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, it becomes prepared. Then the prepared spell is an X spell, so love that. And you get a +1/+1 counter on each of up to X target creatures. Those creatures gain flying, and you draw a card. So pretty neat there. Late game to get some evasion. Early game to build up your commander's counter count. Pretty neat. Ingenious Prodigy is just a skulker that can remove counters to draw cards. Benevolent Hydra can give other creatures counters and also gives other creatures additional counters when they get them. Dika Fractal Theorist gives you, 0/0 tokens with X +1/+1 counters when you cast instant and sorcery spells, where X is their mana value, and it can also make creature tokens unblockable. Forgotten Ancient gets buff over the game, and then you can put his counters on another creature. Gold Vein Hydra is a hasty boy that can enter in with a massive amount of counters, and then when it dies, gives you a lot of tapped treasures, so really neat. Guardian Augmenter can protect your commander and also buffs your commander, but notably that buff won't help reduce the cost of spells. The cost of spells from your commander are only reduced by the amount of +1/+1 counters it has, not by its power. Then we have Lifeblood Hydra, which is another Hydra. Trample, and enters with X++ encounters. And when it dies, you gain life and draw cards equal to its power. So pretty neat there. Primordial Hydra. Instead, at the beginning of your upkeep, doubles the number of +1/+ encounters it has, and then it has Trample as long as it has 10 or more +1/+ encounters on it. Steelbane Hydra, differently, will remove counters by paying mana and destroy artifacts and enchantments. So pretty neat there. Altered Ego is essentially a copy spell that you can also add +1/+ encounters to. Pretty neat there. Elusive Otter has an adventure with X in it to give X +1/+ encounters to any number of target creatures. And then there's just a 1/1 for 1, so I guess a blocker. The Goose Mother is a bird hydra, pretty neat, and makes half X food tokens when it enters, rounded up. And when it attacks, you may sacrifice a food if you do draw a card, and obviously enters with X +1/+ encounters. It's kind of a theme in this deck. Hydroid Krasis is when you cast it, you gain half X life, draw half X cards, round down every time, and obviously flying and trample, so can't go wrong there. Tanazir Quandrix is interesting. When it enters, it can double the number of +1/+ encounters on target creature. Then when he attacks, you may have the base power and toughness of other creatures you control become equal to Tanazir Quandrix's power and toughness till end of turn. So essentially, all those 0/0 tokens you're making become 4/4s with all the +1/+ counters attached. Hangerback Walker is interesting. We've also got Zamone All Questioning, which makes a token primo. If a land into the battlefield under this turn and you have a prime number of lands, that gets confusing and annoying, so probably taking this one out. Stone Coil Serpent, protection from multicolored, can be useful. Kami Whispered Hopes gets you a lot of mana and can give additional counters. Quandrix Apprentice is interesting. You know, you can eventually get lands in your hand when you cast instant sorcery spells. Troyan Gutsy Explorer ramps you for X spells, and then Zamone Quandrix Prodigy can not only draw you cards, but help you put lands onto the battlefield. So pretty neat. Sorceries, we can proliferate X times and pay X and 2 blue to do so. Curse the Swine is mass removal, replaces them with 2/2 boars. Entrancing Melody steals a creature. Animist Awakening ramps you when you already have a lot of mana, so don't know if we need that. Open the Way is a good ramp spell. Primal Might buffs a creature and then has it fight another creature until end of turn. Oversimplify is an exile board wipe in the Simic Colors, which is pretty neat, but your opponents are probably going to get a little bit better outcome from this than you are, but not bad either way. And then Nature's Lore 3 visits to help ramp out. For instance, Nexus Mentality, excuse me, you can choose one or both. If you have a commander, you can only choose one if you don't. Move all counters from target non-land permanent you control onto another target non-land permanent you control, and then remove all counters from target non-land permanent you control. Draw a card for each counter removed this way. So you either are shifting counters from one permanent to another, or you are drawing a card for each counter you remove, or both. So pretty neat. Commander's Insight and Pull from Tomorrow are just instant speed X draw card spells, which is really nice. So is Stroke of Genius. Perplexing Test, not really great with the deck, but works with if you're leaning more into the token strategy side of things. Zamone's Hypothesis is a lot better, returning each creature with power even or odd after you add a +1/+ counter to a creature you control to sort of like even it out. Silk Guard is protection. We've also got Tyvar Stand also has protection. Then we have Biomass Mutation, which is sort of a mass overgrowth effect. Not the best card, but if with your commander making it way cheaper, not bad at all. Quandrix Command has some useful tools, like some targeted graveyard hate can give your commander counters, or it can counter artifact or enchantment spells. And you can even bounce a creature to their hand. So they're all pretty useful. You get to choose 2 of them. So neat there for whatever you need. Quandrix Charm, less useful, especially in a game like Commander where resources are a lot more abundant, but not terrible. Rapid Hybridization and Beast Within are great removal spells. Decisive Denial is a counter that can also be a fight spell. And then Eureka Moment draws you 2 cards. You can put a land up from your hand on the battlefield. And then as far as enchantments, we got a brand new one in Lattice Library. X mana and 2 green, enters with X study counters. When it enters, and whenever you cast your first spell with X and its mana cost each turn, you make a 0/0 green and blue plant, or fractal, excuse me, and put a number of +1/+1 counters on it equal to the number of study counters on this enchantment. So it gets better over time, and you can obviously pump a ton into this as well. So just really strong, and it's going to take a second for it to pop off though. Unbound Flourishing, though, the best reprint of the deck. Whenever you cast a permanent spell with mana cost that contains X, double the value of X. And then for instant and sorceries or abilities that contain X, you copy those spells or abilities. And that's very strong. Hardened Scales gives you an additional counter when you place counters. And then Mana Bloom is also a hidden gem in here. X and a green enters with X charge counters on it. Remove a charge counter to add 1 mana of any color, only once each turn. Beginning of your upkeep, if it has no charge counters on it, return it to its owner's hand. So it's something you can keep recasting over and over, and your commander loves that. Then Brass Infiniscope is a new artifact, 4 mana to add 2 colorless. When you next cast a spell with X and its mana cost this turn, you draw a card and you gain half X life, rounded down. It's great because you don't have to use this 2 colorless for that X spell. You just need to, be able to draw a card and you just have to cast one to draw a card and gain half X life. Fractal Harness makes a fractal when it enters, and you can also double the number of +1/+1 counters on the equipped creature whenever it attacks. So it can be a bit expensive, but your commander makes that a lot easy. Ozolith gives additional counters to your creatures. It's really strong there. Astral Cornucopia, great to have in any, X spell deck. Elementalist Pal as well. You can, get charge counters whenever you cast X spells, and then you can tap for either 1 mana of any color or colorless for each charge counter on it. But you can only use those colorless for X spells. And then Arcane Signet and Soul Ring to round out the artifacts. 37 lands, not terrible, not amazing, but pretty good overall. This is a very focused deck. You know what you want to do here, and I think it's definitely a strong contender in the whole set. So let's go over the 10 cards I'm taking out and the 10 cards I am adding back in. Whoa, gonna cut to now. And Tanazir Quandrix is the first card I'm taking out. Yes, you get to buff your creatures by 4 power when it attacks, and you get to double 1 thing's +1/+1 counters, but it's really this is a win more card for you. It doesn't really do a whole lot. Sure, it's a flying blocker, but I don't know. It doesn't do enough for me. It's too much for 5 mana. Zamone All Questioning, too confusing, and we only get to make 1 token ever. Sure, we can make more tokens later on, but who wants to deal with this? No, you just want to have fun and play the game. So, no. Not this time, Zamone. Animist Awakening, again, even if your commander is reducing the cost of this, you're not nearly getting the value you think you might be. Sure, you might get lucky and get 8 out of 10 if you put 10 into X, but more than likely you're going to get like 3 when you put 10 into X. And that spending 11 mana for 3 lands, not ideal. Entrancing, like if this is a landfall deck, sure, maybe, but no, it's not. Entrancing Melody is a great card, but I'm taking it out because my friend group doesn't love stealing creatures. I want to make my decks that are fun to play, but also not cancer to play against. And cards like this, a little bit cancer. So, just give yourself a bit of chemotherapy and take this card right out. Eureka Moment is a good card. It's okay. You could argue to keep it in, right? But I figured I'd take it out. I'd rather have X spells. Perplexing Test is also weird. We're not really doing the counter strategy, so it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Also, Pull from Tomorrow. Don't know why this is here. I'm going to do that, and we're going to take out the Mage. Whatever it was. You could take out Elusive Otter as a good thing to take out, or you can also take out the Quandrix Apprentice. Either of those are good cards to take out here. We've also got Quandrix Charm, which again doesn't do enough for us. You're probably not going to counter a spell late game. You're sure you can destroy an enchantment, but we would rather have something more versatile. And buffing something by 5, It doesn't. I'm sure you can, I guess, maybe weaken maybe one of your opponents by 2 things. I don't know. And then Soul Ring and Study Hall. Again, want to make my decks fun to play against. Turn 1 Soul Ring is never fun. Study Hall is just a bad land and brings us down to 36, so a bit more efficient there. But let's go through the 10 cards I am adding in. And before I really dive into that, I want to say that, you know, the Tyrannid Precon that came out a good bit ago with the cards from, you know, the Warhammer set works really well with this deck. Loves X spells, kind of a theme in there too, so you could add a bunch of those cards in here and they would play pretty well. But Mockingbird is a great card. It makes a copy of any creature, and you know, you have to pay into it, so it could be expensive, but with your commander that makes it pretty easy, and just a really strong card overall. Nexos makes all your lands be able to tap for 2 colorless to cast X spells, so very strong in a deck that cares about X and its mana cost. And then probably one of the best add-ins here is Rampaging Yaoguai, right? This card is an instant delete button for all of your opponent's treasures, clues, any kind of token artifacts. You can pay 0 into the X, and when it enters, you destroy any number of target artifacts, enchantments with total mana value X or less. Well, all of the 0 mana artifacts and enchantments are going to have you know, 0 mana value. So you destroy them all on your opponent's side of the field. So really, really strong. And then because your commander cheapens the X spells, you can just pump so much mana into this thing and actually get rid of a lot of other higher value artifacts and enchantments on the board. So really good there. Sporocyst is a great ramp spell, and you can scale it up, right, later in the game. You can also potentially draw a card when this enters. So it can replace itself there too. Really neat card to have, and I like it a lot. Tyrant Guard is like a heroic intervention on a stick, so a bit of protection in the deck that cares about putting all of our resources into creatures. And then when, you know, it can also has X in its cost, so you could put counters on it. You could have it enter and draw a card and replace itself, so really good there. Pest Infestation gets us a lot of tokens and destroys a lot of artifacts and enchantments, so love that here. And then for instance, we've got 3 of those. Change of Plans is another protection spell. It's going to make each of X target creatures we control connive, so we're getting to loot through a good amount of our deck, and then we can have any number of them phase out, so protecting those creatures until our next turn, doing a lot there. Spectral Denial here is really great, and so is Syncopate if you want to add that in too. X spell counters that essentially counter target spell unless its controller pays X. This one has a bit of upside, which can cost a little bit less. If you have a creature with 4 or greater power, we're going to have that, so this is going to be even cheaper, and just a good card overall to have on deck. Fastest Intervention, another instant spell with X in its mana value. Look at the top X cards of your library, put 2 of them in your hand and the rest in the bottom, so you're essentially drawing 2. And then you can also counter a spell with this too. So just really strong cards. Having these instants with X and its mana value just really makes it so that you can get your commander a lot fast, like more like your commander being online and really, really cheapening your spells a lot quicker. So pretty neat there. And then Garruk's Uprising, just to get some more trample synergy in here. There's some cards that have trample, but really just getting that across our whole board state and having that consistency is really nice. And then drawing us cards when we cast those big creatures is also helpful. So those are the 10 cards I'm taking out and the 10 cards that I'm putting in. Let me know what you would take in and what you would take out. Make sure to also, if you want a chance to win one of these Secrets of Strixhaven Precons, to like the video, comment down below your favorite Quandrix card, and make sure to keep an eye out as well on the channel for the next 2 Precon upgrades coming out. Make a comment on the previous 2 as well. You got to comment on all of them. We got to make sure each video gets to 50 likes, and when that happens, we're going to be announcing a winner in the US on our Twitch stream, twitch.tv/chaoticCommanderMTG. So make sure to check that out well. And then becoming a channel member does give you an extra entry, so do that if you have the bandwidth for it, right? Otherwise, hope you have a good one, and I'll be back next time with another Precon upgrade review and giveaway video. Bye.